The crystalline spires of the Stellaris diplomatic vessel gleamed like frozen flames against the void of space. Lyra Winter stood at the observation deck, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, straightening her midnight blue diplomatic uniform for the 100th time. As Earth's youngest senior diplomat at 28, she couldn't afford to show any sign of nervousness. "Commander Rogers, are we ready for docking?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "All systems green, Ambassador Winter. The Stellaris have extended their docking bridge. Though I still think this is crazy, sending you over there alone." Lyra smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes crazy is exactly what diplomacy needs. Humanity can't afford another interstellar misunderstanding. Not after the Proxima incident. The docking procedure went smoothly, almost too smoothly. The Stellaris were known for their technological superiority, and it showed in every gleaming surface and silent mechanism. As Lyra walked through the connection tube, her footsteps echoing in the otherwise perfect silence, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something bigger than a simple diplomatic meeting. The reception chamber took her breath away. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal, pulsing with soft blues and purples that somehow managed to be both alien and welcoming. But it was the figure standing at the center of the room that caught and held her attention. Prince Caden of the Stellaris stood nearly 7 feet tall, his silver-toned skin catching the light like polished metal. His eyes were the most striking feature, solid gold with no pupils, yet somehow expressing more emotion than any human eyes she'd ever seen. The formal robes he wore seemed to be made of living starlight. "Ambassador Winter," his voice resonated with harmonics that made her skin tingle. "We welcome Earth's representative." Lyra executed a perfect diplomatic bow, exactly as prescribed in the briefing materials. "Your Highness, Earth is honored by this audience. Please," he gestured with a 6-fingered hand, "follow me to the discussion chamber. We have much to discuss, and I fear time grows short." As they walked through corridors that seemed to shift and change around them, Lyra noticed the tension in the prince's shoulders, the way his guards kept their hands close to their weapons. Something was wrong. "Your Highness," she ventured, "I was under the impression this was to be a preliminary meeting about cultural exchange. Yet I sense there's more at stake." Caden stopped, turning to face her with those impossible golden eyes. "You are perceptive, Ambassador. Perhaps that is why your superiors chose you, despite your youth." He glanced at his guards, then made a subtle gesture. They withdrew to a respectful distance. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors detected something approaching from the direction of Earth's solar system. Something that matches the energy signature of the weapon that destroyed our colony on Proxima b. Lyra's blood ran cold. The Proxima incident had nearly started an interstellar war. Earth had proven its innocence, but the real culprits had never been found. "That's impossible," she said. "Earth destroyed all such weapons as part of the peace accord. Yet here we are." Caden's expression was unreadable. "Ambassador Winter, I need you to understand something. There are factions within my empire who would use this as an excuse for war. They believe humans are too dangerous to be allowed to develop further." "And what do you believe, Your Highness?" His answer was interrupted by a deafening alarm. The crystal walls flashed red, and Caden's guards rushed forward. "My prince, we're detecting multiple unauthorized quantum signatures. We're being boarded." Caden's expression hardened. "It seems, Ambassador Winter, that we're about to find out exactly what I believe." Together. The lights dimmed, and in the distance, they could hear the sound of weapons fire. Lyra's diplomatic mission had just become something else entirely, and as she looked at the alien prince beside her, she realized this was only the beginning. The crystal corridors of the Stellaris vessel erupted into chaos. Lyra found herself running alongside Prince Caden, his guards forming a protective circle around them. The walls pulsed with warning lights, casting everything in an eerie crimson glow. "The command center," Caden ordered, his voice carrying despite the chaos. We need to reach the quantum core. Lyra's diplomatic training hadn't prepared her for combat, but years of mandatory crisis preparation kicked in. Your Highness, whoever's attacking knows your protocols. They'll expect you to head there. Their eyes met for a moment, gold meeting brown. What do you suggest, Ambassador? The engineering deck. Lower profile, but we can still access primary systems. She pulled up the ship schematics she'd memorized during preparation. And it's closer. A blast of energy scorched the wall beside them. Through the smoke, Lyra caught glimpses of their attackers, humanoid figures in sleek black armor that seemed to bend light around them. Shade mercenaries, one of Caden's guards spat. They're not supposed to operate in this sector. They reached a junction, and Caden made a swift decision. Ambassador Winter's suggestion. Engineering deck. He touched a panel, and the crystal walls shifted, creating a new pathway. This way. As they ran, Lyra's mind raced. Shade mercenaries, unauthorized quantum signatures, and a mysterious weapon signature approaching from Earth's direction. It wasn't random. The engineering deck was a marvel of alien technology. Crystals the size of buildings pulsed with energy, creating a lattice that somehow powered the massive vessel. Under different circumstances, Lyra would have been fascinated. My prince, the chief engineer, a Stellaris female named Venna, rushed forward. We've lost contact with the bridge. Multiple systems are being locked out. Caden moved to a central console, his fingers dancing over the controls. Status of the quantum core. Stable, but an explosion rocked the ship, cutting off Venna's words. Lyra steadied herself against a crystal pillar. They're not trying to take the ship. This is too messy for a capture. Her eyes widened as realization struck. They're trying to start a war. Caden looked at her sharply. Explain. Think about it. A weapon signature from Earth's direction. An attack during the first major diplomatic meeting between our peoples. If this ship is destroyed, with both of us on it, the war hawks in both our governments would have their excuse. Caden's expression hardened. We can't let that happen. Another explosion, closer this time. The engineering deck's doors began to seal automatically. My prince, Venna called out, someone's activated the quantum core's overload sequence. We have minutes at most. Lyra moved to a secondary console, her fingers hovering over the alien controls. Can you give me access? Earth studied some Stellaris technology after the Proxima incident. I might be able to help. Caden hesitated for only a moment before nodding to Venna. The console lit up under Lyra's hands, displaying information in the flowing script of the Stellaris. The overload sequence, she muttered, it's not following standard protocols. Look at the energy distribution. Caden joined her, his tall form leaning close. You're right. It's being channeled, they're not trying to destroy the core. They're trying to weaponize it. A quantum detonation that would look exactly like the Proxima weapon, Lyra finished. Giving everyone exactly what they expect to see. The doors shuddered under heavy impact. The mercenaries had found them. Can you stop it? Caden asked, his golden eyes intense. Lyra's fingers flew over the controls. Not from here. The primary sequence is locked to the bridge controls. But... She smiled grimly, I can redirect it. Redirect a quantum detonation. That's impossible. Impossible is what humans do best, Your Highness. She looked up at him. But I'll need your help. Stellaris Neural Interface Technology. You'll have to link with me to give me full system access. The doors groaned again. They had seconds at most. A neural link between our species has never been attempted, Caden warned. The physiological differences will either kill us or save everyone on this ship. Lyra met his gaze steadily. Your choice, Your Highness. The doors began to glow red from weapons fire. Caden's guards took up defensive positions. "Do it," he said. They reached for the neural interface panel together, their hands touching as the crystal technology activated. The last thing Lyra saw before the link engaged was Caden's golden eyes, filled with something that looked remarkably like hope. The universe exploded into light and possibility, and the real challenge began. The neural link burned like fire through Lyra's consciousness. Colors she had no names for exploded behind her eyes as her mind merged with Caden's through the Stellaris technology. His thoughts were alien yet familiar, crystalline structures of logic wrapped in layers of emotion she could barely comprehend. "Focus," his voice echoed in her mind. "The quantum core." Together, they dove into the ship's systems. What would have been incomprehensible strings of alien code became clear as crystal. Lyra could feel Caden's surprise at how quickly she adapted to the neural interface. The human mind, she projected the thought, is remarkably flexible. In the physical world, she was dimly aware of weapons fire and shouting. The doors wouldn't hold much longer. But in this shared mental space, they had all the time in the world. The quantum core's overload sequence sprawled before them like a living constellation. Lyra could see the elegant malice in its design. When it detonated, it would perfectly mimic the Proxima weapon's signature. There, Caden's thoughts guided her. The primary conduits. If we can redirect the energy into the ship's crystal matrix, Lyra finished. But the load would be massive. We'd burn out half the systems. Better than starting an interstellar war. Working together, their merged consciousness began rewriting the core's protocols. It was like trying to redirect a river with their bare hands, but the impossible seemed achievable in this shared state. A massive impact rocked the physical world. The doors burst inward with a screech of tortured metal. Weapons fire filled the engineering deck. "My prince," one of the guards shouted. "We can't hold them." Almost there, Lyra's thoughts intertwined with Caden's as they forced the energy flow into new patterns. Just a few more seconds. The first of the Shade mercenaries broke through the defensive line. Through their shared consciousness, Lyra felt Caden's protective instinct surge. In the physical world, his body moved to shield hers. "No," she pushed the thought at him. "We finish this together." The quantum core's energy reached critical mass. In their shared mental space, Lyra and Caden executed the final commands simultaneously. The ship's crystal matrix lit up like a newborn star. The neural link shattered. Lyra gasped as her consciousness slammed back into her body. She stumbled, but Caden's steady hands caught her. Around them, the engineering deck was a battlefield. The remaining guards exchanged fire with the mercenaries, but something was wrong with the attackers. Their stealth systems were failing, revealing armor that bore markings from both Earth and Stellaris military. "Impossible," Caden breathed. "Those are Royal Guard signatures." "And Earth Special Forces tech," Lyra added, recognizing the modified plasma rifles. "This goes deeper than mercenaries." The ship's system stabilized, the quantum core's energy successfully redirected. But they'd burned out more than just systems, they'd exposed a conspiracy that reached into both their governments. "The weapon signature approaching from Earth," Lyra said, her mind racing. "It's a fake, isn't it? Part of the same plan." "Yes," Caden's golden eyes narrowed as he studied the fallen mercenaries. "Someone wants war badly enough to manufacture evidence. The question is, who profits from our peoples destroying each other?" Before Lyra could respond, a new alarm sounded. Venna rushed to a surviving console. "My prince, we have incoming ships. Multiple signatures, both Earth and Stellaris configurations." The second phase, Lyra realized. They knew we might stop the quantum detonation. This was just to get the major players in one place. Caden's expression hardened. "Then we've walked into a trap." "No," Lyra straightened, her diplomatic training asserting itself. "We've walked into an opportunity. We have proof of collaboration between the conspirators. If we can expose this to both fleets simultaneously, they'll have no choice but to work together to root out the traitors, Caden finished. But we'll need access to the main communication array. Which is on the bridge, Lyra nodded. The bridge currently controlled by hostile forces. Their eyes met, and Lyra saw her own determination reflected in those alien golden orbs. They'd already achieved one impossible thing today. What was one more? I hope you're ready for another challenge, Ambassador Winter. Lyra smiled grimly. After sharing minds with you, Your Highness, storming a bridge seems almost mundane. Around them, the surviving royal guards checked weapons and prepared for battle. Above, two potentially hostile fleets approached, ready to turn this sector of space into a graveyard. They had minutes to prevent a war, expose a conspiracy, and maybe save both their civilizations. Just another day in interstellar diplomacy. The path to the bridge became a gauntlet of laser fire and shifting crystal walls. Lyra moved alongside Caden, their earlier neural link leaving echoes of awareness between them. She could almost sense his next move before he made it, their movements synchronized in a deadly dance. The main lift is ahead, Venna reported, working on a portable console as they ran. But they've locked down all direct access to the bridge. Then we make our own access, Caden said. He turned to Lyra. Your Earth military developed sonic disruptors that could shatter our crystal technology. I assume you memorize the frequencies? Lyra smiled. Page 247 of the briefing materials. But I'll need something to generate the right wavelength. Here. He removed a resonance crystal from his ceremonial collar. Reconfigure this. As Lyra worked with the crystal, their small group took cover in a maintenance alcove. Through the ship's windows, she could see the approaching fleets, dozens of ships from both Earth and the Stellaris Empire, all unknowingly being manipulated into war. The neural link, she said quietly as she modified the crystal. You saw my memories, didn't you? Just as I saw yours. Yes. Caden's golden eyes met hers. I saw your dedication to peace. Your willingness to sacrifice everything for it. Just as you saw my struggle between duty and desire. The crystal hummed to life in her hands, pulsing with reconfigured energy. We make quite a pair, Your Highness. The alien prince and the human diplomat, fighting to save both our peoples from their own worst instincts. Indeed. He took the modified crystal, his fingers brushing hers. Though I suspect this partnership will raise eyebrows in both our courts. Assuming we survive the next few minutes. The bridge doors loomed ahead, sealed and reinforced. Beyond them lay their objective, and likely a dozen or more armed conspirators. Lyra took a deep breath. The sonic pulse will disrupt all crystal technology in range. We'll have seconds before their systems recover. Then we make them count. Caden raised the crystal. Ready? She nodded, drawing the standard-issue stunner she'd been trained with. Around them, the royal guards took position. The crystal's pulse was silent to their ears, but they felt it in their bones. The crystal walls momentarily lost their luster, and the bridge door's locking mechanism failed. They moved as one, bursting onto the bridge. The conspirators had been ready for an attack, but not for the precise coordination between human and Stellaris forces that the neural link had made possible. The fight was brief but intense. When it ended, Lyra found herself at the main communication console, enemy weapons fire having missed her by inches. Caden stood beside her, his royal guard efficiently securing the captured conspirators. We have 2 minutes before those fleets are in weapons range, she said, fingers flying over the controls. The evidence is uploading now, proof of the conspiracy, including their use of both Earth and Stellaris technology. It won't be enough, one of the captured conspirators laughed. The wheels are already in motion. War is inevitable. Caden stepped forward, his presence commanding. No. War is a choice. One we refuse to make. The communication array powered up, broadcasting on all frequencies. On the main screen, they could see the commanders of both approaching fleets receiving their transmission. This is Prince Caden of the Stellaris Empire, with Earth Ambassador Lyra Winter. We have evidence of a joint conspiracy to incite war between our peoples. All ships, hold position and prepare to receive data. Lyra watched the sensor readings anxiously as the fleets approached the deadline. Would they believe? Would centuries of mistrust overwhelm this chance for peace? The fleet stopped. Messages began pouring in as the evidence was reviewed. Orders were issued. Ships from both sides began moving to secure the conspirators' vessels identified in the data. "They're standing down," Lyra breathed. "We did it. We did more than that," Caden said softly. "We proved that our peoples can work together. Trust each other." He turned to her. "Which brings me to a matter of tradition." "Tradition? You saved my life today, Ambassador Winter. By Stellaris law, that earns you a boon. Anything within my power to grant." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Through the lingering echo of their neural link, she could feel his anticipation, his hope. "Anything, Your Highness. Anything." She stepped closer, diplomatic protocol forgotten. "Then I choose partnership. Not just between our peoples, but between us. The human ambassador and the Stellaris prince, working together to build something new." His golden eyes softened. "That's quite a diplomatic request, Ambassador Winter. Who said anything about diplomacy?" Around them, the bridge crew pretended to be very busy with their consoles as their prince drew the human ambassador into an embrace that would scandalize both their governments. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, they had prevented a war, exposed a conspiracy, and chosen a future neither of them had imagined possible. Sometimes, the best diplomatic solutions weren't found in any protocol manual. 6 months after the failed conspiracy, the great crystal hall of the Stellaris Imperial Palace buzzed with an unprecedented gathering. Diplomats from Earth mingled with Stellaris nobles, their differences forgotten in the wake of what historians now called the Unity Crisis. Lyra stood at a window overlooking the capital city, its crystal spires reaching toward the triple moons. Her diplomatic uniform had been replaced by a flowing gown that combined Earth and Stellaris styles, a statement in itself. "The trade ministers are asking for you," a familiar voice said behind her. Something about revolutionizing quantum technology exchange. She turned to find Caden watching her with those golden eyes she'd grown to love. "Let them wait. We've earned a moment of peace." In the months since their neural link, their connection had only grown stronger. Though the direct mental bond had faded, something deeper had taken its place, an understanding that transcended species. "The conspiracy trials begin next week," he said, moving to stand beside her. "We found connections reaching into both our governments, just as we suspected. And yet," Lyra smiled, "their plan to divide us achieved the opposite. Look at this." She gestured to the gathering. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. The investigation had revealed the full scope of the plot. Hardliners from both Earth and the Stellaris Empire had worked together, ironically proving the very cooperation they sought to prevent. Their plan to trigger an interstellar war had instead sparked unprecedented collaboration between their peoples. "The quantum technology exchange program is just the beginning," Caden said. "The medical research teams are making breakthroughs in cross-species treatment. The cultural exchange initiatives are oversubscribed. And the Joint Defense Fleet is giving my former commanding officers fits," Lyra laughed. "They're still trying to reconcile how a diplomatic mission turned into the cornerstone of interstellar peace." Speaking of reconciliation. Caden's tone turned serious. "The Imperial Council has finally reached a decision about our situation." Lyra tensed. Their relationship had caused upheaval in both governments. Earth's diplomatic corps hadn't known how to handle one of their senior ambassadors entering a relationship with an alien prince. The Stellaris nobles had been even more conflicted about their future emperor choosing a human partner. And, she prompted when he paused. They've accepted it, with conditions. Any children will need extensive genetic counseling. There will need to be protocols established for succession rights. The diplomatic implications will need to be carefully managed. Caden. She touched his arm. You're babbling. He smiled, a gesture he'd picked up from her. My apologies. What I'm trying to say is, it's approved. All of it. The partnership, the marriage protocols, everything. Lyra's heart soared. So we can finally make it official? If that's still what you want. You'd be the first human to become part of the Stellaris royal family. The challenge is. She silenced him with a kiss, ignoring the gasps from nearby nobles. I think we've proven we're good at handling challenges together. The crystal walls around them hummed with energy, responding to their shared joy. In the Great Hall, Earth and Stellaris dignitaries continued their mixing, building the foundations of a future neither side had imagined possible. You never did formally accept your boon, Caden said softly. The one earned by saving my life. I thought I made my choice clear. You did. But tradition requires a formal declaration. His eyes twinkled. Especially since the historians are already writing about this. Lyra stepped back and executed a perfect diplomatic bow. Then, Your Highness, I formally request partnership, in all things, for all time. Not just as diplomat and prince, but as equals working to build something new. Granted, he said simply, drawing her close again. Though I suspect you knew the answer before you asked. Above them, the triple moons of the Stellaris homeworld cast their light through the crystal palace, creating rainbows that danced around the couple. In the Great Hall, their guests had noticed their absence, but no one moved to interrupt them. After all, they were witnessing history, not just the union of two people, but of two civilizations. The conspiracy that had meant to tear them apart had instead forged bonds stronger than anyone had thought possible. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. A new chapter was beginning, not just for Lyra and Caden, but for all their peoples. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, illuminating the path to a future filled with endless possibilities. Sometimes, the greatest adventures begin with a single choice, and the courage to see it through.